Can you hear me now? Good. Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Nice to see everyone. I'm happy to be in the room with so many As-Suffah parents. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Abraham. I handle instructional coaching and supervision and professional development for the school. Some of you are familiar with my background. If you're not, I wrote a book called Engaging Muslim Students in Public Schools. I've been training teachers since the year 2016, both in public schools and in the last few years more and more so in Islamic private schools across the country on instruction and behavior management, and As-Suffah is the school that I am working the most with and have been able to go the most in depth with. So I asked Muhyiddin to put this night together. And because it's important that the parents know what the teachers are learning about and how that all contributes into creating As-Suffah into a high-achieving school. I've seen lots of schools across the country, public, private, Islamic, charter, you name it. I've trained over 5,000 public school educators in this country and hundreds more now in Islamic private schools. I'm very, very hopeful for Islamic education in this country. And in our states, we have a lot of opportunity. We have a lot of unmet need for Islamic education. Moving into this new building is a really, really special opportunity. There is no reason for anyone to not think that this cannot be and will not be a great school. And really, we want it to be the best school. And that is a great dawah to everybody, the better this school can be and that Islamic schools can be. And there's all kinds of reasons, there's all kinds of factors that go into that, okay? Now, as far as building a school culture, all right, I'd like you to look at this graph on here, okay? This graph shows aggregated test scores, or kind of a summarized test scores of schools in the UK, free schools that are free to go to. And their progress, their GCSEs, these are the big standardized tests that they do in the UK, okay? And you see all the test scores, the average test scores of the schools bunched up towards the middle. And then all the way on the right side, there is a single school far to the right here that is blowing all the other schools away, okay? This is a school that is called Michaela, okay? Michaela School. You can look it up in the UK. It's not an old school. It's been around about 10 years or so. And in 10 years, they have built themselves into a school that is basically the highest achieving school in the UK. If you were to look up Michaela, you would quickly find this article from Time magazine that describes it as the strictest school in Britain. And if you searched and looked up the school, you would find all kinds of things from the principal or the headmaster of the school openly branding and advertising the school as the strictest school in the UK. And another amazing thing about Michaela is the students that they serve are students that would generally be classified in the American system or in the UK system as disadvantaged or at risk because of different factors concerning their income level of the families they come through or the immigration status of their families. Many Muslims send their kids to this school in the UK. You can see some Muslim kids in this picture right here, okay? There is this school is built on a philosophy and foundation of which there is a very comprehensive and high amount of research in the field of education that shows thoroughly that schools that are strict, meaning that they have very high expectations for the students in terms of behavior and in terms of academics, and they are very proactive about holding the students to those expectations, those schools out-achieve schools that do not do that, plain and simple. There is a really thorough and comprehensive body of research. This is just showing the headings of one full literature review of all the research that exists on this, another replete study that compares this concept of strictness between East Asia and the Western world. And, at As-Suffah Academy, we use Singapore math as our math curriculum because Singapore is one of the highest achieving countries overall in math. Part of that is because they have a very good math curriculum. It's sequenced really well. Spirals practice of the skills very, very well. It's put together very, very well. But also, too, the country has a culture of high expectations for the kids. And you actually see that in high-achieving East Asian countries in general. They have a strict, high expectation culture for the kids, and that is conducive to achievement. Now, in the Western world, it is the same thing. When schools are strict with kids, meaning they hold them to very high expectations, it does increase achievement. But in the Western world, it's important that the kids interpret the strictness in a certain way. They have to interpret it as a strictness that is still loving and still caring, and they can't interpret the strictness as being mean. If they interpret the strictness as being mean, then the results are not there. So a lot of times people have sensitivity to that word strictness, and it's important to understand that when we talk about it, strictness doesn't mean mean, but in the Western world schools that accomplish this, they implement in particular what you call warm strictness, which is specifically based on a philosophy and concept that is taught in this book, Teach Like a Champion, which was published by a teacher in New Jersey who was part of a consortium of charter schools in Newark, New Jersey, that if you look at their scores and you compare it to the other schools in Newark and New Jersey and the other schools with students of the same demographics, you see the same things you see with Michaela. They are blowing the other schools out of the water. So we want to be one of those schools that blows everyone else out of the water and has really, really high learning and academic achievement for the kids. And at these schools, when they do social emotional assessments of the kids, they find that the kids are socially and emotionally healthy. They have positive self-concepts of themselves. And they don't have any things that people worry about with being strict to the kids as far as them suffering from anxiety or depression. Rather, because the schools are so highly structured, it actually gives a comfort to the kids of predictability in their learning environments, and it sets their learning environments up for success. Okay? Now, this warm strictness is based on two aspects. Okay? One is having adult authority in the school being absolute, and I'm going to talk a little bit about how you achieve that in a comprehensive and healthy way, and what we've worked at so far with the teachers of As-Suffah to start putting that into place, and what we will be adding to it going into the new building to make it kind of complete. And the other aspect is teaching character proactively, teaching certain character virtues proactively, and Mr. Sean will talk about how that's going to be taught at the school in the classes and the types of values and virtues that will be taught to the kids, okay? So how do you make adult authority absolute? And how do you hold kids to high expectations, okay? I want everyone to look at this very, very closely, and this will be helpful for you being a parent if you pay close attention to what I'm going to say right now, okay? So this is a figurative graph I'm going to put together here, okay? Let's say you have student misbehavior or child misbehavior. And going up vertically on the graph, you have some sort of rating of the time and energy that it takes to redirect or to fix a kid's behavior, okay? And then on the bottom, you have the time that the adult takes before redirecting that child's behavior. Now, this is figurative, but what this is conceptually built on, and anyone who has thorough experience in managing kids and has gotten successful in managing kids in a school will understand this chart looks at exactly like this. So when kids misbehave or they do something that just doesn't follow the expectations that have been set for them, the longer that it takes for you to redirect them, the more time and energy one is going to spend in doing that redirection. So therefore, methodology-wise and philosophically-wise, it makes sense to redirect the misbehavior as soon as possible. And really what that means is you redirect it even before it becomes misbehavior, but even when it becomes getting out of the expectations that were set for kids. Very classic example to illustrate this with a classroom setting. The biggest issue that any teacher deals with in a classroom usually is kids side-talking. The teacher's talking, and the kids side-talk to the student next to them to try to have a conversation that's not related to what they're supposed to be learning, and they're not listening. And the biggest mistake that a teacher can make and that new teachers often make is they'll be teaching in front of the class. They see that first kid turn and talk to the kid next to them, and they say to themselves, Well, I hope he just turns and starts listening and stops that conversation, because I don't want to stop teaching. I don't want to interrupt what I'm doing. And if the teacher just lets it go like that, is that conversation between those two kids going to stop? It's not going to stop. Not only will it not stop, but two other kids on the other side of the room will notice, hey, Zaki and Ahmed are over there talking. If they can side talk while the teacher's talking, then we can side talk while the teacher's talking. And then they will start to side talk. And once you have two groups of kids doing it, then two more catch on. And pretty soon, the teacher has 40% or half of the class side talking and not listening to him or her. And then they got to do a whole big thing of saying, hey guys, quiet down. We need to pay attention, all this type of stuff. And those kids, they got disconnected from whatever learning they were supposed to be doing. So what is better for the teacher to do is to address this situation the moment that first kid turns his head to talk. If you do it like that, you can actually do it without saying anything. And there's actually a specific tactic that is used for this specific instance in schools, because it happens all the time, where the teacher cuts off their speech in the middle and they pause, and that acts as a nonverbal cue for the kid to make them realize that the teacher has noticed him or her talking or him or her not paying attention. And usually, if you do that nonverbal cue early, it gets the kid just to redirect himself. He's not invested in the conversation yet. It hasn't built up, and he hasn't been called out or anything, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time or energy. And that's a specific strategy that we've worked on at As-Suffah multiple times for when the kids side talk. And any school that controls kids well, they do that. That's just an example. In principle, this concept applies to a teacher in a classroom, a parent with a child, working one-on-one with a kid, as well as a whole school. Where schools mess up is they take too long to do this redirection, and they let things go before addressing issues. And when it comes to setting expectations with kids, the reality of expectations with kids is the expectations are not what you say to kids. The expectations are what you let kids get away with. Because what you permit kids to do is a training mechanism for them. And what you redirect upon them is a training mechanism for them. So if you tell the kids that you need to be quiet in class, but then you let kids whisper and talk while you're talking as a teacher, your expectations are not really to be quiet in class. Your expectations are, you can side talk while I'm talking. And that's what we teach the teachers at As-Suffah. And that is what we are trying to apply as best we can as a whole school with all the school policies. And moving into a new building, the school-wide policies need to be different, and it's a chance to really reset the school-wide policies, especially policies concerning the common areas of the schools, to have very high expectations with them to create a disciplined culture that kids can thrive in, okay? Now, I have this graph. So nonverbal communication is one of the big things that the training with the As-Suffah teachers is focused on. That whole thing I just talked about with pausing, that's just one thing. There's whole ways you can teach about how you approach kids while they are supposed to be working but they're not doing their work, about how you get them quiet, about how you look at a kid when they talk back to you and you need to redirect them. There's whole systems of nonverbal communication that have been put together that are studied and known to work for redirecting kids quickly when the behavior is small. And nonverbal communication also relates to the warmth part of strictness. Because you can be warm with a kid, well, how do you do that? It's an art more than a science, but one way that you can put it into a tangible practice with things that you can learn concretely and apply, is through nonverbal communication. How do you stand in front of the kids? What is your speaking pattern like with them? Your tone of voice, your facial expression, all this type of stuff. Nonverbal communication is a very highly studied field. It's very highly studied in the field of education, and it is really core to how kids experience adults. Dealing with kids is how you say it matters way more than what you say type of business. And really how the kid experiences an adult overall, nonverbal communication is really, really core to that. And kids are actually more sensitive to nonverbal communication than adults are, especially facial expression. And nonverbal communication that works for managing a classroom and managing a school, it is all centered on calmness. It is all centered on being calm and maintaining composure. and especially maintaining calmness and composure, especially when the kids test you, because kids always test you, and the kids do things that might trigger you. That is what it is all centered on. And kids, they interpret calm adults as adults whose authority they respect and whose wisdom they will take. A lot of people make the mistake, and kids can be very annoying. When kids test boundaries, adults naturally experience it as being annoying. So when you get annoyed, a stress reaction triggers in you. When a stress reaction triggers in you, you have a physiological response where your muscles start to tighten, your shoulders raise, your jaw starts to lock, and your brain releases adrenaline into your bloodstream. That gets you all rushed up. That causes you to want to have your limbs raised at kids. It causes people to want to raise their voice at them and all this type of stuff. And being reactionary and acting upon your stress reaction with kids, that can work to get them to behave for like a short time in their life or like a short time in their experience with you, but it doesn't last because they get desensitized to it over time. And then they start pushing back. And an adult who acts that way with kids don't experience comfort with that adult because the adult tells the kid through their nonverbal communication that they don't have emotional control of themselves. So if the adult doesn't have control of themselves, what they communicate to kids is, I don't have control of myself in this situation, so therefore I don't have control over the situation in general. And that gives kids anxiety, and for certain types of kids, it prods kids to test the boundaries even more. So this whole concept of being intentional with your nonverbal communication and being calm overall, it is a really important factor to getting the kids to experience adults in a certain way where this warmth aspect of strictness is held to. So you hold kids to high expectations and you carry out consequences and you hold them to a certain standard. You just do it with low blood pressure instead of high blood pressure. That is the general philosophy behind it. And that works very well for parenting as well as teaching too. And we might have some future sessions where we make specifically what we teach the teachers about this available to parents as well. Okay? So nonverbal communication enables you to address things in this area in a way that is very cheap. It gets the kids to turn around. You don't have to make phone calls home. You don't have to take points away. You don't have to give detention or whatever. It enables you to do that as best you can. Okay? Now, the other thing that enables kids to really follow disciplined expectations very well is teaching the precise expectations of how you want the kids to behave and how you want them to act in a very, very thorough and precise manner. And at As-Suffah, we do that through a process called interactive modeling. So in August of 2023, I did an all-day session on nonverbal communication with the staff, and we've revisited it this year. This year, as I've been working regularly with them, what we really hit in August this year was what you call interactive modeling. Okay? Interactive modeling is a way in which you teach kids how to behave and how to follow expectations and processes throughout the entire school day in a way that is very, very thorough so they can have zero confusion over what the expectations are and so that they can actually practice them. They can actually act them out. Okay, and it's another thing you can do at home. So just to give you an example, like at the beginning of the year, you have to teach the kids how to hang their backpacks on hooks at some certain point. So that becomes a process that the teacher works on. And you go over all the details of it. And there is details to this type of thing. Like a backpack, it's supposed to be hung on this hook. It's not supposed to be hung on this. If you have a locker or you have a series of hooks like this, and the kids hang it like this as opposed to like this, well, now you have the backpacks all running into each other and all this type of stuff, and it doesn't work out and you create problems. So all those small things for the day, you can tell the kids, put your backpacks away neatly. But if it is not really shown to them and it's not practiced for them, they're not going to be able to do it competently. And for them, in their young minds, there will be ambiguity, or it won't be totally clear what the expectations are, and that makes it harder for them to be redirected. And it makes it harder for them to follow the expectations. So interactive modeling overall is a 7-step process where the teacher takes any process you're going to do during the day, getting materials out, walking in the hall, opening the locker, passing papers out, listening to the teacher, writing, anything. And the teacher describes the behavior to the kids in explicit detail. The teacher then models the behavior, meaning he or she actually shows them how it's done, prompting them to pay very close attention to it. Then the teacher asks the kids to say what they noticed him or her doing when they did the modeling. And then the teacher asks one of the students to model it for their classmates. And then after that student models it for their classmates, then the teacher asks the class, what did you notice your classmate do? And then the students say what they noticed their classmate do. And you might do a few rounds of that, and you build up to having the whole class practice the routine exactly as it's been shown and taught. And then after the whole class practices, then the teacher gives feedback on what went well, what went wrong, and you maybe practice it again, and you practice it until the kids get it right. Now, what this process does, in step one, the kids hear the expectations. So that engages what you call the auditory modality of them. When the teachers model for it, they see it, so it engages their visual modality. When the kids are asked what they notice and they say something about it, that engages their verbal modality because they're saying something about it. And when the kids practice it, that engages their physical modality. They actually do it. To really get expectations and to really know how to do routines and procedures throughout a school day or at home, kids need engagement with all of these modalities to really have it settle into them what the expectations are. Especially the younger they are. In general, it's a general rule that the younger they are, the more they need explicit practice and direction with all these modalities to really understand expectations and have them be habitual. Okay? And the same thing works at home. So the first week of the school year, this is part of why we did the thing at the beginning of the school year and we're doing now, where middle school comes first and then elementary school comes second. Because you have to take time to work with the kids. How do you walk in the hall? How do you go into the musalla? We're going to have to work with how do you get out of the lockers? How do you deal with the cafeteria? Because we have a cafeteria now. All this type of stuff. You have to have the time to do that with each class and do all this practice with them and have it lengthened out. So it works easier to do when you have them come in a staggered fashion because you can deal with the class in chunks as opposed to trying to have the whole school do something at the same time. So the schedule tomorrow will look something like this, okay? We'll have the 5th, 6th, 7th grade broken up into their grade groups. There will be an administrator, myself with 5th grade, Mr. Sean with 6th grade, Muhyiddin with 7th and 8th grade. And through each one of these times, we will go through this interactive modeling process for all of these things with very, very high and tightened expectations. So like when you see Salah here, that's not the time that they will pray. That's the time that that class will go to the musalla and work precisely on how you line up outside of it, how you put your shoes away, how you walk into it. And when you do this practice with kids and you set the expectations, it's going to be an expectation that they're silent in the hallways. When they don't do it when they practice, then you make them do it again. You make them do it again. The kids don't want to do it again. They'll be like, oh, this type of thing. And that's like a small initial consequence for not doing it right. And it's part of how you show we're going to work on this until it's done right. And that's what tomorrow will be spent doing with the middle school, okay? Now again, like part of what is difficult in the old building is because it was so small, you had to have different things happening on top of each other in the same place. So the place where kids learned also had to be the place where kids ate. And sometimes the place where the kids pray also had to be the place where the kids play. That doesn't really set kids up for success well, because they associate things with environmental cues, and it becomes a confusing message over time, this type of thing. The big benefit of this building, it's still not as big as you'd like, but there will be a separate place to play and a separate place to pray. There will be a separate place to eat and a separate place for class. And the place to eat in the cafeteria and lunch, that will be the place to socialize. The class will be not. And we'll be able to hold these expectations a little higher. Now, the other thing that will be changing when we come into this building is with middle school, it will no longer be, it will no longer be that the middle school kids have one grade that stays in one room all the time and the teacher comes in and out. We wanted to not do that at the beginning of the year, but logistically it wasn't possible in the old building with the different sizes of the rooms. Here it is. It is really not ideal to have that done Because when you have a transition where one teacher has to go out and another teacher has to come in, you can have anywhere from 10 seconds to a few minutes of the kids being in the room by themselves and an adult not being there. And it takes about 5 seconds for the kids to get out of control, if not less than that. And I really disliked that was the case. So that will not be the case in here. That means that we're going to have to work really, really thoroughly with the middle school kids on how to transition themselves in the hallway and how to how to go to their locker, how to manage the locker, and how to keep their stuff in the locker except for the book and the notebook that they need for the next class, to interchange those things in between class, and to go to class within 5 minutes. And this building is delicate. And also what kids do when they are moving about the common areas of the school really, really affects the environments and the climates and the feel of the school. So holding the kids to really high expectations in the hallway is going to have a huge focus of what tomorrow is all about, and making sure the kids experience consequences if they do not stick to these expectations, I have told the administration, has to be an extremely high priority. And in general, in education, you take somewhere from 3 to 6 weeks at the beginning of the year, where the focus is more on making sure the kids know the routines and procedures of the day and holding them to the expectations with it, than it actually is on academics. Because when you do that, after about 3 weeks, it starts to take hold with the kids. And then over the next 3 weeks, if you stick to it, it becomes habitual to the kids. And once it becomes habitual to the kids, everything else flows easier. And you have put in a foundation for a really high expectation school climate. And moving into the new building is a great opportunity for us to do this, okay? Now, we'll be showing kids the slides first and then going through this intentional practice tomorrow, slides that show all the expectations. Especially for the hallway, I want the parents to know what they are. Because the kids, if they don't follow these, will get a consequence. And I've told the admin to be assertive and proactive and aggressive about meting out consequences for these things. Because it is not just about the small little thing that the kid did. It is about creating an overall climate that is the best for enabling academic success for kids. So the kids are going to be silent in the halls at all times. Talking will not be allowed in the hallways, period. It's a bigger building, that's great. It's still mostly drywall. There's still rooms that are close together. If you have a whole bunch of chatter and stuff going on in the hallway, that is going to be heard throughout the building. That's not fair to the elementary kids who are in the classroom and in the hallways less than the middle school kids. For when the elementary school kids go into the hallway, they will have rooms right next to them. It's not fair if they're making any noise whatsoever in the hallway, because you'll hear it from the classrooms. And kids need silence and quiet to get into deeper thinking and to focus on academics. And you won't have that if there's all this noise going on in the hallway. It is also, of course, as we first moved into the building, we're sharing this building with professionals. We're sharing this building with professionals who work with kids with autism, who are generally very sensitive to environmental changes and can have sensory issues that make them sensitive to noise. And it is certainly not going to be respectful to our neighbors in here if the kids are allowed to really make any noise at all in the hallways. So it's going to be an expectation for the kids that they are silent in the hallways. If they pass someone else in the hall and they want to give salam to that person, we'll teach them to do it non-verbally. They can put their hand on their heart and say, and do it like that. No problem. That's what you can do. But it's no talking, zero talking in the hallways. Okay? The kids have to keep their hands to themselves at all times. That's a general expectation in schools. They are not going to be allowed to touch the walls in the hallway. This is going to be hard for some kids because some kids like their sensory impulses or they want to run their hand against that wall, see what it feels like in this type of stuff. But having these high expectations for kids and giving consequences to them when they get outside of the expectations, everyone needs to think of it as a benevolent thing. It's not something about being mean to the kid. It's not something about shaming the kid and making them feel bad for not doing something right, but it is a training mechanism to increase their self-discipline. Okay, if you look at the old building, if you look at a lot of schools that don't paint the walls regularly, and there's some schools out there you might not realize, particularly the ones in the suburbs, that paint the walls in the building every single summer because they're hiding all the marks and stuff that the kids put on the walls throughout the year. Like the kids running their hands, putting their hands on the wall, certainly running writing utensils on the wall, it makes the whole building messed up. This is a very, very nice hallway, and it's modern looking. But the wall, the way that it can scuff easily. It's going to just look awkward, and it's going to give off the feel of an unserious environment if all these markings and things build up on the wall over time. There is a lot of big glass windows in this building. Kids put their hands on that. They run their fingers on that. They're going to get fingerprints all over it, and that's going to look like a mess. And it won't work. We don't have the janitorial capacity to be cleaning that stuff every single day. We'll make the kids understand that, and we will practice with the kids getting their stuff out of their locker, getting their book, and walking down the hall with their books exactly like this so that their hands are occupied with doing it while they're walking down the hall. And for the elementary school, they'll either give them a way to do with their hands or put their hands by the side or something like this. And I have told the admin, and they have told me they will, to be so serious about this that, not only do we need to be have the admin mostly stationed in the hallway to monitor the kids, but also to check the security cameras and check the transitional times in the security cameras. And if there was a kid who did this, especially did it excessively, to have a talk with that kid and start putting that kid in the consequence system. Not as a way to make them feel bad or say they're bad or anything, but as a training mechanism for them. Okay? The kids are also going to have to get their materials from their locker for middle school in between the classes in one trip. So if they are going from math over here to or science over here to social studies down there, they got to go to the locker, put the math book away. They'll be carrying a common binder or notebook with them. Get the social studies book. And if they arrive to class and they are not prepared for what they need for that class, they cannot go back out into the halls to get what they need because they have to be trained to show up ready to learn. And if we let kids leave the class to go get that book they forgot, it becomes a game that the kids will play nonstop. Kids either intentionally or with the habit just forming subconscious in their head, they will start going to class, forgetting their stuff, so they can say, hey, I forgot my stuff, so I can go out in the hall and walk around. Kids play this game all over the place in middle school and high schools. And if the teacher allows them to go out, it just doesn't work. And we will have a spreadsheet put together. And when a kid shows up to a class one time, not prepared, teacher's going to put that in a common spreadsheet with a different tab for each grade in middle school. If it happens to a teacher and it's the second time that kid's name appears in the spreadsheet, the admin will have a phone call home made. And if it happens a third time where the kid shows up to class unprepared, they will get a more serious consequence that will be inconvenient for them, that I'll get to in a moment. That will be something new for the school, okay? And for a lot of these things, there's going to be this kind of 1, 2, 3 thing, okay, with the consequences. And this showing up to class on time is a big one. And I need parents to understand that if you get a phone call home saying your kid showed up to class on time, or your kid comes home complaining, I couldn't do my math work because the teacher wouldn't let me go get my math book, they will have been taught explicitly, thoroughly, what the expectations are and actually acted it out and practiced it before they have to implement it in real time. And there is school-wide culture reasons why the expectations are that way. Okay? So please support the admin when you get those phone calls home and with what the bigger consequence will be that I'll get to in a moment here, okay? If they get to the third time. Okay, we're also going to, inshallah, put painter's tape through the center of the hall so it is very distinguished of what is the right side and what is the left side. And the kids will have to walk on the right side. And that will be a rule that will practice and will be an expectation, and that will facilitate smooth transitions throughout the hall, okay? Of course, the kids will have to be calm, and there's going to be zero tolerance for running, skipping, or jumping. Something like that might jump, like, past a warning, okay? I said the right side walking, and absolutely zero tolerance for roughhousing, okay? We know the kids like to play, fight, and all this type of stuff, and you just can't have that at all. They got to keep their hands to themselves, okay? So this is just the hallway, okay? I have another slide for the cafeteria. I have another slide for the lockers. Have another slide for the musalla. All this type of stuff we'll be going over with the kids. But this different transitioning that will take place in the building is a big deal. It is a huge thing for maintaining the culture and making the teaching better. I've been to probably over 30 Islamic schools in the country. Of the ones that are middle and high school, even some of them that, like, if you look them up, they are kind of branded and really kind of are some of the better Islamic schools. I have not come across a single one yet that has middle and high school, and they have the kids transition from class to class as opposed to doing this thing where the teachers come in and out. That is something that the Muslim community should be ashamed of. I've never heard of a public school that does it that way. You don't set the kids up well when that is done, because you have a classroom then that the kids own, not the teacher. You have a math teacher. The teacher should be able to set up their room with math stuff all over it. So it's the math learning environment. Same with the science environment. The kids should never be in a room where they are unsupervised. So no school should do that. It wasn't a logistical possibility at the old school. And just by doing that, we will really improve the instructional quality of the school, because we won't have the teachers rushing around all these days. We won't have the teachers getting in the class and having to settle the kids down at the beginning of this type of thing. The teacher will be able to set the tone from the beginning. The other thing, too, something that is a challenge of a small school where the kids move in one cohort throughout the day, and there is a lot of kids. There is a lot of kids in the Twin Cities who are in this type of school. When they get social interactions going on, they just build up throughout the day, and the kids just get more and more energized about their social interactions through the day and more distracted from their academic work. If you have a bigger school where the kids don't have the same classmates in every class, there's a natural break in those social interactions, because they go from this class to that class, and whoever they're talking to in this class, that person's not in this class with them anymore. But our kids are in the class with the same kids all day. So this silent transition is important for making sure that there is a hard break and a felt transition for the kids that is silent between classes. And even in the classes, of course, they shouldn't be built up talking, but there needs to be that type of transition. And we can't have them interacting socially in the hallways, getting some conversation going that they then want to carry into math class. And they come into math class, and their focus is more on whatever they're talking about versus the academics. Okay? So that's the hallway. And again, similar things with the cafeteria and all this type of stuff. And but the hallway is very, very important. So that was the one I wanted to show to illustrate to the parents this concept of high expectations. Now, a few other things too. Things like the school uniform, okay? Uniform policies and clothing policies in the school are not something frivolous, or not something that someone just decides. So things like a kid not wearing a hoodie, there is reasons why that is. If a kid wears a hoodie, he's blocked off his peripheral vision. When kids are working independently in class, you want their peripheral vision to be open so that they can notice the teacher if the teacher starts approaching them. If they can't see the teacher, then they don't have a sense of how well the teacher is monitoring. There's other things like the kids can hide headphones, this type of stuff. But another thing that kids do a lot with hoodies and hats is they tease one another with it. They'll do this little thing where they pull off the hoodie of someone else, and that kid gets angry, all this type of stuff. So that's not just like some willy-nilly policy. That is something to reduce distraction. The same thing with makeup and the female students in makeup. I know schools in Minneapolis that are restricting the students from bringing makeup in, and not just there too, because this is becoming such a big thing with the kids and the Instagram and these tutorials and all this type of stuff, and the girls wanting to put makeup on and all this type of stuff, and they're hiding it in their backpacks or they're hiding it in their lockers. Okay? In the beginning, we're going to do daily locker checks at the end of the day. Every other week, we're going to have the kids clear out the lockers. The kids will have their book, their jacket, whatever winter stuff they need. We'll teach them how to manage the books in the locker so they can get it in and out, but they're not allowed to have personal items that don't belong in the school in the locker. So they can't have toys, they can't have makeup, they can't have anything like that. And it's going to be monitored. And it's not just to be mean to the kids. It is about maintaining a school culture that is conducive to academics. And the way you do that is tending to these small things, because these small things snowball. So you can control them, okay? Now, so like nonverbal communication is a big thing we've worked on to be able to redirect kids here cheaply, swiftly, maintaining calm and warmth between them so it doesn't become a big thing. Interactive modeling is what you do to make sure that kids don't even misbehave in the first place and that they know the expectations so well so that when you do redirect them, it's easy for them to get back into the expectations because they've actually practiced it, okay? And these are two things that we've all put a lot of work into implementing at As-Suffah Academy, okay? Now, still even with those things, you still have times where kids misbehave, usually due to a lack of impulse control or whatever. You still have times where they get out of the expectations. And something needs to be done when kids don't follow the expectations persistently. Because one kid who doesn't follow the expectations persistently sends the message to all the rest of the other kids that they don't have to follow them either. So what the school is going to be implementing starting next week is detention. Okay, the school is going to have detention, which Mr. Sean will be running, and he can talk a little bit more about when he gets up here. But in general, it will be 45 minutes after school on Wednesday, correct? And it will be the kid who is in detention. This is only for middle school, okay? Elementary school, you take recess away. But the kid who is in detention, his siblings will have to go at the regular time, or her, and they will have to be in detention. Detention is not supposed to be nice. It's supposed to be completely quiet. They will have to work on something, study something, or write something. If they don't have something that they can do, they will have to write out, I will not violate school policy. I will not violate school policy, or whatever more specific thing that they did. You know, how much can you do in 45 minutes? I think somewhere from 75 to 100 times is reasonable to keep them occupied. It's not supposed to be something that feels good. Now, again, it's not meant to shame the kid or shame the parents or anything else, but this is a training mechanism. The kids will not want to go to this. And they have to know that we are serious about this expectations, and you do need a threat like this in place in order to really have a school have tight expectations. You also need these other things. You can't just rely on punitive measures. You need all these other things that prevent you from having to do that with kids, because that makes it so the amount of kids who you do that with are minimal. But it is an important piece of the puzzle that the school is now at a point to start implementing, okay? So I don't know if I talked over my time or beyond my time, but Mr. Sean will start talking about the second part about how the school will teach character proactively, but we can take questions. Should we take questions at this point of anything that was just said or gone over?
Yeah, that's a good break. Have some questions.
Okay, is there any questions before we move on to teaching
Just a quick one here.
character? Yes.
So the transition between classes, that's staggered 5 minutes, or all classes transition at the same time?
Yeah, the whole middle school, it's for middle school, will transition at the same 5 minutes. Okay, it'll be like there's a bell schedule. We won't have a bell that will ring off. The teachers will trigger it, but we're going to coordinate it through walkie-talkies to make sure it does happen at the same time. Okay, and it's going to be the same thing for kids showing up late. Okay, the initial rule with going to the bathroom during the transitions is that the kids can't do it. There's a specific time during class period when they can be let out to go to the bathroom. Elementary school will have defined bathroom breaks for each class. Middle school, it will be by individual kid, but it's going to take place at a certain point in the lesson plan during the class where it's appropriate for a kid to do that they're not missing instruction. If the kids get really good at the transition where they're all getting to class in 3 minutes and not 5 minutes, then we might be able to say, you've earned the responsibility to use the bathroom, but the initial rule is that you're not going to be able to do that. So we make sure they do it well. And being late to class is something that we're going to track meticulously and aggressively, and it will be another thing that will earn like a 3 strikes you're out detention earning type of thing for the kids too. Okay? Thank you. Other questions? Yusuf.
Curiosity, I'm not sure if this is relevant to this segment or not, but in terms of cell phones, is that in a different, is that a no-no for
That is a-
late to the
That's a no way, correct?
Okay.
I've never seen a kid with a cell phone at As-Suffah, personally. The policy is no cell phones. Okay, I think that should be something so severe that might be an automatic attention personally, or at least an automatic phone call, or at least you take it from it. Okay, it's time.
Also the smartwatches.
Yeah. Okay, the smartwatches too. Thank you for that. Okay. Other questions? Yes, sir.
So you talked about Michaela as a school.
Yeah.
Do you have any statistics of the admission of those, like admission criteria for those schools?
Yeah, it's open admission. Okay, it's open admission. They cap it, and then after that, when they have open spots, they have to do a lottery because they do a waiting list. But it's not a school that filters kids by criteria. They're not allowed to they don't make the kids take a test and say you have to get this score to enter the school. It's not a school that does that. They're not allowed to do that. It's a free school. It's not a private school. So they're not allowed to do that in the UK under the type of school that they are. They have a waiting list, but by law, when they have open spots, they have to do a lottery for admission. It's very similar to how charter schools are done here. Yeah. And the same thing with the uncommon schools in Newark that this gentleman was a part of. It's the same system. Yeah.
But we will continue, inshallah, to have our builders to accept the.
Right. Yeah. Any other questions?
Any questions from sister side?
Yes.
I'm not sure if you touched this on this. How does the dismissal process work? When they release these?
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, how does the dismissal process work? I'm not sure. Like, this is the place to talk about the whole dismissal process per se, but maybe Sean can talk about that because I'm not here every day for that to be carried out. But it's a process like any other in the school that will teach the kids this way as far as their expectations and things. Yeah, and then maybe you're asking like because the building has a new setup, that type of thing, like how that. Yeah, that's what Dean's cared
Okay,
for.
inshallah, we'll send you the communication on how to enter the building. And that was one of the things I was planning to cover. But.
And we'll have people outside to direct and stuff tomorrow too.
Yeah, we will be outside directing and then kind of like going in similar to the old building, so one of us, a couple of us will be there outside with walkie-talkie or, the mic, and then, we'll use the PA system here to announce if someone is getting late. And we do have our own built system, dismissal system. So we'll continue to use that. If we have to change, we'll look into it after getting some experience in this building. So hopefully it should be better because we have bigger parking lot in Shalom.
Inshallah. Yes.
One more time on the detention, like, is that happening on a specific day?
Yeah. When Wednesdays after school.
So let's say a kid makes
Yeah.
something a mistake on Monday.
Yep.
It'll be done on Wednesday?
Ideally, it's done as soon as possible. Yep. Yeah. If they get to that 3-strike level. Yeah.
I think he's asking, is Wednesday the designated date for the detention?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yep. Wednesday. Yep. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
this isn't, I just want to say, I can't believe it's 2025.
Mm.
And, I mean, what you said is halal music to the ears. I mean, I'm serious. No, this is what kids need today.
Yep.
Is the discipline.
Yep.
In reality, I think it's missing.
Yes.
So for them to come to school, this is like a school/boot camp.
Yep.
And in today's society, I think this is the missing ingredient. This discipline.
Yep.
This is amazing.
And there's data that it increases achievement. Okay, like especially for disadvantaged kids, especially in inner city schools. So I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, inshallah. And just help us implement it. That's the big thing. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, big day tomorrow. Brother Sean, you want to come up here? So the other element of this, okay, I know I spent a long time on this, but like teaching kids character proactively is another big thing that these schools do, which of course Islamic school, we're doing that. So Sean's going to talk a little bit about that, okay?